And joining us now via Skype is Andrew Hyatt, director of the movie Paul, Apostle of Christ. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Well, listen, we feel honored because we actually we had a screening here of the movie with our friend Eric Roth just before it came out in theaters. And now, as we said, this week the movie is on DVD. I just saw it in Redbox and soon coming to Blu-ray and digital. What has it been like to see this message of early Christian communities shared with so many people?
Yeah, it's been awesome. You know, just very humbling, of course, to be able to bring this monumental figure to the big screen and now to TV screens. But I also love this idea that, you know, people are being very moved. You know, this is the first time I think people are connecting with a real experience of the first century church, which, you know, we know the story so well. You know, we've grown up, we hear it every Sunday, we hear Paul's letters, but I don't know that we really kind of have connected the dots in a way of an experience with the first century church.
I understand, Andrew, early in your career, you didn't want to be involved in faith-based films, and now you've done a few of them. Tell us about that change of heart.
Yeah, well, yeah, if you would have told me when I got to film school that I'd be making Bible movies or Christian films, I probably would have, you know, started a fight with you, which I know is a little ironic. But, you know, I think that, you know, God, it really took that encounter that you guys played that wonderful clip of. Thank you for sharing that. And you know, you just start to realize your purpose here is not for yourself. You know, it's God gives us these gifts to use for His purpose. And so that heart of just wanting to tell His story now has been the focus the last few years.
And of course, Paul had that conversion too. What was it like for you? Did you learn anything about Paul that you didn't know by doing this movie?
You know, what I learned personally, and I think a lot of people are experiencing through the film, is sometimes Paul, to me, was always this very angry, very gruff, kind of get your life in order, let's go, people kind of guy. And when I really dug into his letters more, you know, I really saw such a real, raw and gritty guy, but somebody with so much love, so much sympathy, so much you know, his hurt came out of feeling like he couldn't help as many people as he wanted. And so there's a real, I think, empathetic guy in Paul that James Faulkner portrays so well in the film.
And you mentioned James Faulkner there too, and if you could talk about the cast, of course, Jim Caviezel plays Luke. I had the opportunity to see the screening when it was here too, so I just thought they did a wonderful job. Their interaction, maybe if you could talk about that and how important their acting was to presenting Paul's message.
Yeah, well, we were, you know, super nervous when we were putting the film together. You know, how do you cast Paul, you know, Luke, you know, who do you bring? And so we were just so blessed to have James and Jim. And, you know, the thing about Jim and James, what I loved is they really wanted to focus on the humanity of these guys, the brotherhood, what it would have really been like for these guys to spend so much time together, be on the road together, you know, taking care of one another, and to bring that humanity, a little bit of humor, a little bit of just real life into the situation. And I think, you know, there's some wonderful scenes where the two of them are just, you know, almost joking around, you know, as old buddies and guys who have been in the trenches together. And I love that stuff. And I think that's what the audience is responding to.
What do you want the audience to walk away with, Andrew? Is there something you want them to learn, inspire? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Inspire and encourage. You know, here's, you know, the fathers and mothers of our church, of our faith, and to watch them experience, I think, even the persecution that they went through, and still to hold so tight to the gospel. And, you know, how do you love your enemies? How do you love Rome when Rome is murdering you in the streets? And that's a hard thing. And I think to be able to grapple with that, I want people to leave the theater or leave, you know, when they turn it off at home this weekend or the next 2 weeks, you know, they say, whoa, I kind of want to think about my own faith and my own life and maybe feeling comfortable and happy on Sunday, and then I go back to my normal life. Maybe that's not quite what it's all about.
You mentioned, Andrew, earlier when we were talking about you know, coming out of film school and stuff and doing these faith-based films. Is there any difference between doing what you would call, I guess, a secular movie as opposed to a faith-based movie? What are some of the differences or similarities?
It's a great question. I think that the biggest change has just been the community that's gathered around. It's what a wonderful, amazing thing. You mentioned Eric Roth at the beginning of the show, and just that. What an incredible thing that that there is this team of prayer warriors, this team of churches that have come rallying around a film, around a story. I mean, that's pretty special. And so we did mass, every morning right before we shot. For the day, we gathered in prayer at lunch. That's a pretty rare thing, I think.
Yeah, you probably don't see that in the secular movies quite as much.
Probably not. No, I don't remember those things happening.
Well, finally, for people who would want to watch the film, where would they go? Because it's a great thing for parishes, families, schools, their libraries. How do they get a copy?
Absolutely. Well, right now it's on digital anywhere that you can, Google Play, Amazon, iTunes, all that stuff. And then on Tuesday, it'll be available, at all your stores, Walmart, Amazon, anything you can think of. And, you can go to paulmovie.com is probably the easiest thing for parishes and schools if they kind of want to bring in, there's a wonderful thing where they can bring in Eric Groth and he can come and do a night of reflection and talk about the film and the process. So a lot of ways, but paulmovie.com is the best way to check out today.
Well, Andrew, thanks so much for joining us. Next time in Boston, you'll have to visit us here at Catholic TV.
Absolutely. Would love it. God bless you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.